So for my article analysis, I chose an article titled English Language Learners, Abstract Language, and Teaching About the Cold War, a short article in a journal called The Source. Now, what is The Source? The Source is a publication that's put out by a group called the California History Social Science Project. It's a statewide network of teachers in high schools and universities that work together to improve classroom instruction, student learning, and literacy. They develop this various programs, ideas, um, classroom materials, and a number of other items to help teachers and help students understand history, understand critical thinking, understand reading and writing, all of the core skills that are associated with social sciences in secondary school. And the source, again, is published by UC Davis. Now, to start in the article, they go over several challenges that EL learners have. And the first is one that pretty much anyone in the class will understand, is that they must learn academic content while simultaneously learning the language of instruction. That is, whatever the discipline that they're in, whether it's math, English, science, history, they're trying to learn the content within the class, and at the same time trying to either continue their understanding of the English language or even truly get a grasp of the language itself. Now, when it comes to history, a lot of the time it rests itself on the language that they are actually understanding. And particularly with history is that it is a very vocabulary rich discipline, much like English or science. Now, with history, it's not just vocab by itself, but it's also metaphorical language that is often used in history and typically also used as a shorthand for describing many complex processes that happen throughout history. Now, what are some examples of metaphors that are typically used within social science classrooms? Well, as we've seen numerous times, empires rise and fall. The Roman, the British, a number of others throughout history. Populations at various times tend to explode. Obviously, not literally people exploding, but the rate at which populations grow have gone up exponentially. There are also nations that become dependent on others, in the same way you might be dependent on a friend or a colleague. We have the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, which was anything but cold at times and certainly had nothing to do with the temperature. Presidential candidates will race. And unless it's the seventh inning at a Nationals baseball game, as shown in the pictures here, typically they're not actually racing against each other. And many concepts throughout history and throughout a number of social sciences and in other classes have roots. Not like a tree, but a metaphorical tree nonetheless. Now, one of the most important parts of the article I found was a matrix that the author created, which is 6 steps for teaching EL students. And it breaks them down into 6 different parts, and each one of those gives a definition. So number 1, when it comes to history, is background knowledge. It's trying to link new concepts that the students are understanding to their background, to experience, and to past instruction. The second is a clear explanation of concepts. When it comes to new ideas, when it comes to new concepts, when it comes to new instruction, instructors have to be very clear with the concepts that they're trying to get across and the ones the students understand, so you're not confusing them. Number 3 is instructional strategies. Obviously, this is important because you're being able to scaffold different ideas, different activities, different strategies to help those students at RELs when it comes to understanding the content that you're presenting to them. The 4th is interaction. Obviously, EL students are typically very reluctant to speak out in class, whether it's through a lack of their understanding of the content or it's a lack in confidence of their English language skills. But interaction is incredibly important and it's incredibly useful when it comes to understanding the content and sharing out. And typically in social sciences, there are a lot of group activities that are involved and strategies that are brought through that are going to be used as well. The 5th is obviously practice and application, having the students use the skills that they have developed, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and applying that to various activities, whether it is watching a video, or reading a primary source, or reading a map, or any of the other different activities that are typically assigned with a social science class. And the last, of course, is review and assessment. Coming back to these contexts, concepts, vocabulary, ideas, comprehension, and making sure that the students truly understand the material, particularly when it comes to the history classes at the high school level, building on each successive unit until the end and having a cumulative exam, and in some cases an AP exam for AP World History, AP European History, or AP US History. Now, in the article, they go into detail with a sample lesson plan on the Cold War. Now, why the Cold War, you might ask? Well, it offers a number of opportunities for EL students to encounter a number of abstract language and ideas that are built in. Again, we talk about the Cold War itself. It has nothing to do with the fact of the temperature, but the idea that the United States and the Soviet Union were not fighting a direct war against each other, and for a long period of time there was no engagements and no fighting. The language surrounding U.S. foreign policy also tends to describe events very abstractly, particularly when it comes to containment. Containment in and of itself is a metaphor, and it was the largest part of U.S. foreign policy during the Cold War. So understanding the idea of containment of itself, and that it is not a literal containing of things, people, or ideas. And again, containment is a crucial concept for students to understand the Cold War, whether it's something they're learning about in U.S. history, European history, or in world history, and it's something that is one of a number of different topics that have to be introduced very carefully and very thoughtfully to EL students. Now, to wrap things up, I thought the article was very excellent. It offered a number of matrices in terms of giving an idea for the lesson plan for teaching EL students, for helping to understand content, particularly when it comes to social sciences, and understanding how students need to be involved within classrooms. There are several points at the start of the article where it doesn't really bring a lot of new information in when it comes to the struggles that EL students have. However, it does help to frame those struggles, frame those problems, and to help put a good spin on what things should look like in a history classroom.